The moment I saw it, my brain refused to process what was in front of me. After a grueling 14-hour drive back from visiting my sick mother, all I wanted was to park, unload my car, and collapse into my bed. But as I turned onto my quiet Lakeside road, my foot slammed on the brake, sending my groceries flying off the passenger seat. There it was, a massive yellow semi-truck, parked right across my driveway, completely blocking my entrance. At first, I thought maybe it was some mistake. Maybe a lost trucker had taken a wrong turn and parked here for the night. But as I took out my phone to snap a picture, I noticed something chilling. This wasn't just some random inconvenience. The truck was parked with absolute precision, perfectly blocking my entire driveway, while leaving my neighbors untouched. And then, like a scene out of a bad movie, she appeared, Victoria Peterson, the self-proclaimed queen of our HOA, clipboard in one hand, red lipstick perfectly applied, and that plastic, condescending smile I had grown to despise. "Oh, good, you're back," she called out, waving like we were old friends instead of sworn enemies. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain calm. "Victoria, why is there a semi-truck blocking my driveway?" She sighed dramatically, flipping through the papers on her clipboard. "Well, after careful review, the HOA board determined your driveway violates Section 7.3 of our bylaws. It's 6 inches wider than permitted and the wrong shade of concrete." I stared at her. 6 inches? She nodded smugly. "And the wrong shade of concrete. The board voted last night to enforce the correction immediately. Until you fix it, your driveway is officially blocked." My blood boiled. I've lived here for 5 years with this exact same driveway, and now it's suddenly a problem? Victoria's eyes narrowed. Rules are rules. Perhaps next time you'll think twice before rejecting reasonable HOA proposals. And there it was, the real reason. 3 months ago, Victoria and her husband, George, had proposed draining part of the lake to build a private tennis court. As one of the few lakefront property owners, I had spoken out against it at the community meeting. They'd lost the vote badly. Ever since then, Victoria had been playing dirty. But this was a whole new level. I took a deep breath. Try to remember my doctor's warning about my blood pressure. "Can I see the paperwork for this decision?" Victoria smirked. "Of course. You'll receive the official notice within 10 business days. I almost laughed. 10 business days? They had already blocked my driveway, and now I was supposed to wait 2 weeks to even see the paperwork? "In the meantime, you can park on the street," she added, her smile widening. I clenched my fists. The street was half a mile away from my house. There was no way I could park there and haul everything I owned back and forth. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "You can't just block people's driveways out of personal grudges." Victoria gasped, placing a hand over her chest like I had insulted her honor. "Grudges? Oh, no. I'm simply enforcing the rules that keep our property values high. Unlike some people, I actually care about this community." Before I could respond, I heard footsteps approaching. Derek Wilson, my next-door neighbor and the only person who intimidated Victoria, a retired military officer with no-nonsense attitude. Derek had a reputation for not putting up with HOA nonsense. "Everything okay here?" he asked, crossing his arms as he glanced between us. Victoria's fake smile snapped back into place. "Just handling HOA business, Derek. Nothing to worry about." Derek glanced at the truck, then at me. Seemed like a pretty extreme measure over a driveway. I let out a sharp laugh. "Tell me about it." Victoria's grip on her clipboard tightened. "The board's decision is final. The truck stays until compliance is achieved." And with that, she turned and marched back across the street. Derek waited until she was out of earshot. "They've gone too far this time." I nodded. "It's personal. She's been after me since that lake vote." Derek sighed. "That truck has been here since dawn. And I saw Victoria taking photos of your property yesterday, while you were gone." A chill ran down my spine. Why would she need photos? I was done playing nice. Marching inside, I dropped my groceries on the counter and pulled up the feed from my security cameras. After someone vandalized my boat last month, I had installed a comprehensive system covering my entire property. I rewound the footage to 5:30 a.m., and there it was, the truck arriving before sunrise, Victoria directing the driver exactly where to park. I felt my hands tighten into fists. She had planned this perfectly. But then, something else caught my attention. Rewinding further, I spotted something strange. At midnight the previous night, Victoria hadn't been alone. A man in a dark suit had walked the property line with her, pointing at my dock and taking notes. My stomach twisted. Who the hell was he? And why was he interested in my dock? The next morning, I woke up to another surprise. A violation notice. Correction, 12 violation notices, each one carrying a $100 daily fine until resolved. Improper landscaping. Failure to maintain siding color compliance. Unauthorized modifications to property structure. It was absurd. They were throwing every rule in the book at me, hoping something would stick. And then the rare warning came. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Be careful. The HOA is not what it seems. Check the financial records. I stare at my phone, my heart pounding. Who sent this? What were they talking about? Looking out my window, I saw Victoria and her husband George walking door to door. They were talking to my neighbors, pointing at my house. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. They weren't just trying to find me. They were trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me. And for the first time, I wondered, what was the real reason they wanted me gone? That evening, Derek stopped by again. Check your mail, he said, handing me a flyer. It was a poorly photoshopped image of my house with the words, property values at risk. Don't let one bad neighbor ruin Crystal Bay shores. An emergency HOA meeting had been called for tomorrow night. The topic? My problem property. I ran a hand down my face. They're turning the entire neighborhood against me. Derek nodded grimly. George is going door to door telling people your illegal renovations could lower property values by 15%. My mind raced. I needed to fight back. But how? And then I remembered something. The man in the dark suit. The way he examined my dock. The cryptic text warning me about the financial records. This wasn't just an HOA power trip. Something much bigger was at play. And I was right in the middle of it. I couldn't shake the image from my mind. The man in the dark suit. The way he walked my property line at midnight, taking notes. Something wasn't adding up. Victoria and George wanted me gone. That much was clear. But why was he involved? I spent the next few hours digging through my property documents. Sure enough, my driveway measurements matched exactly what had been approved when the house was built. There was no violation. So if the HOA wasn't after me for real rule breaking, what were they really after? Then, at exactly 10:32 p.m., another text came through. Check the HOA financial records. They're hiding something. Follow the money. My pulse quickened. Who was sending these messages? And why were they helping me? I tried logging into the HOA's online portal, where financial reports were supposed to be available to all residents. Access denied. I refreshed the page. Still nothing. Frustrated, I called the HOA's management company. A bored-sounding woman answered, "Oh, that section is temporarily down for maintenance." "Since when?" I pressed. She hesitated. "It'll be back up soon." A blatant lie. I hung up and exhaled sharply. Something was going on with the HOA's money, and I needed to know what. The next morning, I woke up to something worse than the semi-truck. A crowd of neighbors standing on my lawn. They weren't just standing there. They were pointing at my house, whispering, shaking their heads. And leading them? Victoria. Clipboard in hand, she was performing, dramatically gesturing toward my house, nodding at their concerns, making me out to be some kind of community menace. I stormed outside. "Victoria, what the hell is this?" She turned with a sweet but deadly smile. "Oh, good morning. Just answering some community concerns." One of the neighbors, Mrs. Johnson, frowned at me. "We've all worked hard to keep this neighborhood beautiful, but you just refuse to follow the rules." Another, Mr. Murphy, nodded. If you're allowed to break HOA regulations, what's stopping the rest of us? I could barely believe what I was hearing. Victoria had turned my own neighbors against me. Are you serious? I scoffed. This is about 6 inches of driveway. Does that really justify blocking my home with a semi-truck? Victoria sighed dramatically. Oh, dear. It's not just a driveway anymore. She pulled out her clipboard and flipped a page. Failure to comply with landscaping rules. Unapproved exterior paint colors. Unauthorized modifications to property structure. My stomach dropped. She was making things up. And the worst part? The neighbors believed her. You can't just invent violations, I snapped. That's fraud. Victoria gasped, hand to her chest, playing the victim. Fraud? Oh, I'm just enforcing the rules that everyone else follows. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. This wasn't about me breaking rules. This was social pressure. Intimidation. They were trying to push me out. I was about to lose it when Derek appeared at my side. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice cutting to the murmurs. If he's in violation, then so is half the neighborhood. I don't see you blocking their driveways. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Victoria forced a laugh. Derek, dear, this isn't your concern. It is now. Victoria's smile wavered. She knew she couldn't intimidate Derek like she could the others. The neighbors looked between us, uncertain. The spell was breaking. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to push me further into the fire, my phone buzzed. A new email. Subject: multiple violations requiring immediate action. Attached was a bill. 12 violations. $100 per day per violation. $1,200 per day. If I didn't pay, the HOA had the legal power to put a lien on my house. I turned the screen to Derek. They're trying to find me out of my home. His jaw tightened. This isn't just HOA politics anymore. No, it wasn't. This was a targeted attack. That night, I called Derek. We need to see the HOA's financials. He hesitated. That's not going to be easy. Victoria's got her claws deep in that system. But then he paused. Wait. My daughter, Alicia, works at the county records office. If the HOA has been up to something shady, the financial records might not just be in their system. There might be county filings, too. My pulse quickened. Can she check? I'll call her now. 30 minutes later, I was at Derek's house, sitting across from Alicia at the dining table. HOA records spread out before us. She pointed at a series of transactions. Look at this. A monthly payment of $55,000 to Lake Management Services. I frowned. That's not normal? Derek shook his head. Not for a lake this size. Then Alicia slid over a business registration form. Lake Management Services was owned by Raymond Frost. I felt my stomach drop. The man in the suit. And listed as board members? Victoria and George Peterson. I leaned back in my chair. They'd been funneling HOA money into their own company. But that wasn't the worst part. Alicia pulled up foreclosure records. 3 lakefront homes have been foreclosed in the past 2 years, all of them for unresolved HOA violations. I scanned the documents. All 3 properties had been bought by shell companies, and all 3 shell companies were linked to Raymond Frost. I looked up at Derek. They're forcing people out and buying up lakefront property for themselves. I leaned back, running my hands down my face. Why the lakefront homes? Alicia frowned. Hold on. She pulled up a county survey map of the lake. Then she froze. Oh my God! I leaned over her shoulder. What? She pointed at my property. Your house has the deepest water access point on the entire lake. It's the only spot where larger boats can dock. A chill ran down my spine. That's why the man in the suit had been inspecting my dock. They weren't just harassing me over my driveway. They needed my dock. They had already bought out 3 other properties. But mine was the key. Derek exhaled. They're trying to get rid of you because your property is in their way. I swallowed hard. This was way bigger than HOA corruption. This was a scam, a hostile takeover. And I was standing in the middle of it. Then my phone buzzed. A new text from the unknown number. They're moving faster than you think. Be careful. I sat there, staring at the text on my phone. They're moving faster than you think. Be careful. I had barely wrapped my head around the fraud, money laundering, and hostile takeovers happening right in my own neighborhood. Now, whoever was texting me was warning that time was running out. But before I could respond, my security camera alert pinged. A black sedan had pulled up down the street. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. She wasn't one of my neighbors. She wasn't one of Victoria's cronies, either. She was different, dressed in a crisp suit, hair pulled back, eyes sharp as a blade. She walked straight up to my front door, looked directly into my security camera, and held up a badge. FBI. I barely had time to process before my phone buzzed again. This time a call from an unknown number. I answered, my voice tight. Who is this? A calm, no-nonsense voice responded. Mr. Carter, my name is Agent Sophia Martinez with the FBI. We need to talk. Now. I opened the door, my pulse hammering in my throat. Agent Martinez wasted no time. She stepped inside, scanning the room like she expected someone else to be listening. We've been watching your neighborhood for 6 weeks, she said, setting a folder down on my kitchen table. And your situation with the HOA caught our attention, but not for the reasons you might think. She flipped open the folder. My breath caught. Inside were surveillance photos, not of me, but of Victoria and George Peterson, meeting with Raymond Frost, meeting with men in dark suits. By the lake, by my dock. Agent Martinez watched my face. We believe Victoria and George have been laundering money through your HOA. Those random fees, sudden assessments, and maintenance costs. She tapped a photo of Raymond Frost. That money was being funneled into his hands. I swallowed hard. Why my house? She turned to another page in the folder, an aerial map of the lake. Your dock is the most strategically valuable point on the water, she said. It's deep enough for larger boats, and that makes it perfect for what they're really doing here. I looked at her, my stomach twisting, which is... Martinez's eyes darkened. Smuggling. I sat back in my chair, trying to process. You're saying my HOA is running a smuggling operation? Martinez nodded. Drugs. Weapons. Stolen goods. We suspect your lake is being used as a drop-off point for criminal syndicates. A memory flickered in my mind. Those boats moving without running lights late at night. I had thought they were just night fishermen. I was dead wrong. Victoria and George don't just want you gone because of personal grudges. Martinez continued. They want your property because you're in the way. Your driveway and security cameras have been making it harder for them to operate. I felt sick. Victoria hadn't just been playing HOA dictator. She was covering for criminals. And worse, they knew I was onto them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at my ceiling, heart pounding with every sound outside. Somewhere out there, Victoria, George, and Frost knew I was standing between them and their operation, and they wouldn't let that stand. Then, crash. The sound of shattering glass downstairs made my blood turn to ice. Someone was inside my house. I grabbed my phone, my hand shaking, and sent a text to Derek. Help. Someone's in my house. Then I reached for the panic button Agent Martinez had secretly given me. I pressed it. Nothing happened. My Wi-Fi had been cut, and then I heard voices. Check his office first. A man muttered. I recognized the voice immediately. George, Victoria's husband. They were here, looking for evidence, looking for me. I crept toward my closet, pressing myself into shadows just as Victoria's flashlight beam swept through my bedroom. He must have heard us, she hissed. The bed's still warm. I held my breath. She stood just feet away, scanning the room. Then a voice called from downstairs. Victoria, I found something. Her footsteps retreated. I let out the smallest, quietest breath. I heard paper shuffling, drawers slamming. Then, it's a flash drive. My heart stopped. They had found my backup drive. The one with everything we uncovered. George's voice turned urgent. It's password protected, but Raymond says we can crack it. Take his laptop, too. I had to do something. I couldn't let them take everything. But before I could move, bang. A loud pounding on the front door. Police, open up. Victoria froze. George swore under his breath. Back door. Now. They made a run for it. I burst from my hiding spot, chasing them downstairs, just in time to see Derek tackle George into my flower bed. Victoria tried to run, but an officer grabbed her. "Get your hands OFF me," she shrieked. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer said coolly. She thrashed, eyes locking onto me with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done." And maybe I didn't, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. The flashing blue and red lights outside my house should have made me feel safe. They didn't. Victoria and George were handcuffed in my front yard. But something about the way Victoria smiled at me as she was shoved into the back of a police cruiser made my stomach twist. She knew something I didn't. Agent Martinez stepped up beside me. "You did good," she said. "We got them on breaking and entering, destruction of property, and financial fraud." But she didn't look relieved. "It's not over, is it?" I asked. Martinez shook her head. "Not even close." She pulled out her phone and showed me a text message intercepted from George's phone just before his arrest. "They're on to us. Frost says we have to clean this up. Fast." I swallowed hard. What does clean this up mean? Martinez's expression darkened. "It means you're in danger." By morning, the neighborhood had turned against me. Somehow, overnight, Victoria's supporters had organized. Flyers were plastered all over the neighborhood with my photo and the words, "FBI informant," in bold red letters. I stood on my porch, stunned. I had exposed criminals, saved my home, and uncovered a massive fraud scheme. And yet, my own neighbors were glaring at me like I was a villain. I heard angry voices from the street. Linda Johnson, one of Victoria's closest friends, pointed at me from her front yard. "You're trying to destroy our property values," she shrieked. "The Petersons built this community," someone else shouted, "and you're working with the government to tear it down." My hands clenched into fists. They actually believed her lies. Derek appeared beside me. "They're scared," he muttered. Victoria and George spent years feeding them paranoia about outsiders. And now, they think you're the outsider. I exhaled sharply. "We need to show them the truth." Derek nodded. "Then we hold a meeting. Tonight." I didn't have a choice. If we didn't take control of the narrative, the entire neighborhood would turn into a mob. That afternoon, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a USB drive and a note. I worked as Victoria's assistant for 2 years. She kept separate books. This proves everything. I plugged the USB into my laptop. What I saw made my blood run cold. Bank records, fake invoices, phantom contractors. Victoria and George had stolen over $2.3 million from the HOA over the past 5 years. The raised HOA fees? Lies. The sudden community repairs. Fake. The landscaping violations, the parking restrictions, the foreclosures, all part of a systematic fraud operation designed to push people out and take over lakefront property. And they had almost gotten away with it. Until my driveway. I clenched my jaw. This ends tonight. The community meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the local clubhouse. By 6:30, more than 50 residents had arrived, more than any HOA meeting in history. Even families who had moved away came back, desperate for justice. But just as I was setting up my laptop to present the financial evidence, Derek rushed in, out of breath. "We've got a problem," he said. "Someone just spotted Victoria's brother in the parking lot." I frowned. "What? He doesn't even live here." "Exactly." Before I could respond, the clubhouse lights flickered. Then, total darkness. A hushed wave of panic spread through the crowd. People murmured. Some grabbed their phones, turning on their flashlights. Then we heard it, the roar of a diesel engine. Headlights cut through the clubhouse windows. My heart stopped. The same SemiTruck that had blocked my driveway was now barreling straight toward the building. People screamed. I froze, watching in horror as the truck accelerated. Victoria's people were going to ram a truck straight into a crowded building just to silence me. Then blinding lights. A dozen FBI vehicles appeared out of nowhere, blocking the truck's path. The semi swerved, crashing into a retaining wall. FBI agents swarmed the vehicle, and as the driver was dragged out, I finally saw his face. Raymond Frost, the real mastermind of everything. Inside the clubhouse, Agent Martinez took over. She wasted no time. She connected my laptop to the projector, displaying the HOA's secret financial records for everyone to see. The room went silent. One by one, Victoria's loyal supporters gasped as they saw the truth. Fake invoices, stolen funds, illegal property takeovers. Tom Murphy, one of the residents who had been forced to sell his home, stepped forward. They didn't just steal our money. They threatened our families. His voice cracked as he told the crowd how Victoria's people had taken photos of his children at school and used them as leverage. Linda Johnson, the woman who had screamed at me earlier, looked horrified. I didn't know, she whispered. Agent Martinez stepped in. The Petersons weren't just scamming you, she said. They were helping Raymond Frost run a full-blown smuggling operation through this lake. And the reason they targeted your neighbor, she pointed at me, is because the security cameras were getting in their way. Gasps rippled through the room. And then FBI divers appeared on the screen. Live footage showed them pulling waterproof containers from the lake. Weapons, drugs, stolen goods. It was all real. Everything Victoria and George had built was based on crime, and the entire neighborhood had been tricked into defending them. This was never about a driveway. This was about a criminal empire that had just been torn down. Victoria and George were sentenced to 25 years in prison. Raymond Frost cut a deal, exposing a network of corruption that led to dozens of arrests, including 3 county officials who had helped approve suspicious zoning changes. And the HOA, we held new elections. Derek won unanimously. His first act as HOA president? No more ridiculous HOA rules. No more power-hungry presidents. No more corruption. Instead, the money actually went toward the community. A real playground. A proper clubhouse. Environmental restoration of the lake. And my driveway, officially declared in full compliance. The SemiTruck that started it all, sold at auction. Proceeds went to the families who had lost their homes to Victoria's scheme. And for the first time in years, my neighborhood wasn't run by fear. It was run by us. As I sat on my dock one evening, watching kids splash in the water and families grill on their patios, Linda Johnson approached with a plate of cookies. She sat beside me, guilt written all over her face. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I believe Victoria's lies." I smiled. "You weren't the only one." She sighed. "You know the funniest part?" I raised an eyebrow. If they had just left your driveway alone, they might have never been caught. I laughed, because she was right. Sometimes, the smallest battles unravel the biggest crimes. And all it took was 6 inches of concrete.